sort of introduce thoughts and ideas that might get you thinking in a different way or whatever. Our first speaker is Mark McGreevy, who's the Chief Operating Officer of John SISK and Son. Mark, you're very welcome, and thank you for taking the time out. I know you have a very busy schedule. I know you're heading for a board meeting shortly, so thank you, and I much appreciate that. But to our members, just to say that Mark, among his many responsibilities within SISK, is responsible for the strategic services and investment business, which includes SISK Living, SISK Joinery, and Vision Build, all businesses that are pivoting to the modern methods of construction, okay, and to offsite. And it's on that theme that Mark's going to address the conference today, the role that sort of offsite construction, offsite manufacturing of construction, okay, is going to impact on the industry, and where our wood and timber sector is well positioned to benefit from that. Okay, so Mark, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Michael. Let me see if I can pull up my slides there now. Sorry, I need to share. Is that working there, Stephen? Is it in terms of those slides? Can you hear me?
The slides are there, Mark. If you're able to turn up your own volume just a tad, okay, that would be excellent.
Right. Right. Okay.
That's perfect. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. Good morning. Morning all. First of all, can I just say thank you to the IWFM for giving us, the opportunity to support today's event. It's fantastic to see the great work the IWFM is doing, and in such a progressive way to support this sector. Also, I'm thankful for the opportunity to say a few words to you this morning and to outline a vision that I and the SISK group hold for a new normal that was mentioned earlier, a new normal for the construction industry. And I believe a new normal that will support many industries that are involved in the construction sector well into the future. And that vision is for a modern industrial strategy that will see us moving away from the way we've traditionally done, constructed the built environment in the past, to doing so in a new manner going forward that will be much more sustainable and will allow the industry and those who partake in it to have a much more resilient and sustainable future for themselves also. So I'm going to outline some of the problems the industry is suffering from, what the solutions are, and what the benefits that will accrue for not just the construction industry as a whole, but equally for the likes of the IWFM, and how IWFM can play a role in helping us all realize this, this new strategy. I want to first of all start by talking a little bit about myself. All right. I'm nearly 25 years now with SISK. More recently, in the last 12 months, I've taken up a role that sees me responsible for several standalone specialist businesses within the group. And some of those businesses are in the manufacturing field, as Stephen has mentioned earlier. And my eyes have been opened as to how challenging it can be to build those businesses up, because they're all very much fledgling businesses, and how tough it can be out in the wider marketplace and the kind of challenges they suffer. And that's why I believe that this strategy that I'm talking about today will go a long way to support the future of those businesses. Something else you may have garnered from my accent: I'm a Monaghan man. I went to school in a small little village north of Monaghan called Emmyvale. And I see some of the members of this organisation are from that neck of the woods. And I remember going to school in that area. My dad was a teacher in the local school. And he was born and bred, in fact, in that area. So he knew a lot of people that were involved in the various businesses and industries that are prevalent in that part of the world. Industries that are predominantly involved in the furniture and joinery sector. So I have a bit of a soft spot for the industry. I remembered well as a kid growing up, visiting those businesses. And indeed, as I go back home now and speak to family and friends, I have a good sense of how that industry has ebbed and flowed over the years. And it's that first point I want to maybe start with. That first point, yes, in terms of how that industry, how your industry has changed, and indeed has changed in a similar vein to the construction industry that has suffered from the boom bust cycles and suffered from other effects as well in terms of an opening economy and the arrival of cheaper products and goods from places further afield. And I remember, as the slide shows, back in the 80s and 90s, these industries in my hometown being very, very strong. And then more recently in the noughties, being struggling from that open economy situation, from the flood of new and cheaper products into the marketplace. And many of those businesses that I remember as a kid going out of business. I'm delighted to see that some have survived, and see new businesses have arisen in Monaghan and indeed across the country. When you look at the membership of the IWFM, you can see how they're starting to grow again. It's amazing to see that this particular sector is contributing over 1 billion of revenue as part of our national GDP, which is quite substantial, and is becoming a major player in the construction industry. And it's great to see how they've bounced back. But the challenge for us will be making sure that they no longer suffer from those boom-bust cycles that I've just spoken about. And how do we make them more resilient and provide a more stable future for those industries and indeed many other industries. And it's it's this strategy that I speak about, this modern industrialized strategy, that I believe will play a vital role in providing that secure future for all of us. But let's also look onto the bonnet a little bit further in terms of other problems the construction industry has suffered from and that we need to solve. The industry, as I mentioned earlier, has changed very, very little over the years, despite the advancement in technology and indeed in robotics and other equipment. The industry has continued to operate very much in the same way as it has done 100 years ago, constructing most of its product on site. Its productivity levels have changed very little, whereas other industries have overtaken it and progressed way ahead of it. And that needs to change. Its effect on the environment is now the focus of an awful lot of attention. And it can no longer continue to do what it's been doing, and it needs to move to much more sustainable ways going forward. It's also struggling from the point of view of competitiveness and affordability. And that's not surprising if you're not addressing fundamental productivity issues, nor are you if you're not addressing the skills issues that is besetting the sector. And all of these issues and many more can be addressed if we take this major leap forward and grab hold of the opportunity to making the shift towards a modern industrialized strategy. It will see us move to doing much more, as much as possible, off-site in manufacturing facilities like you and your members have around the country. And if we do that, we'll start building at speed. We'll reduce the waste and our effect on the environment. We'll start producing a much higher quality product also. And just as important as all of that, will play a major role in balanced regional development around the country. Now let's look at the benefits to all of that in a little bit more detail. As this slide shows on the top left, we could potentially see up to 70% reduction in labour requirements on site. And if you think about that, that dramatically changes the landscape of the need for skills on site. It also goes a long way to addressing something else that's a big issue in our industry, diversity, and attracting new and diverse talent to the industry. If we can create the work environment that's in factory conditions, I believe we'll start getting a much more diverse workforce back involved. Energy and sustainability is something I've spoken about. We could potentially reduce our need and requirement for energy by as much as 70% also on site. We could speed up the construction of our projects by as much as 30%. And a little example of this is a statistic that I'm close to from one of the businesses that we have in the portfolio, where we're manufacturing panel systems for homes and houses in one of the businesses. And when I was in the factory the other day, the guys were telling me that they've now got the production, their output down to just over half a day to produce all of the panels for a standard semi-detached house. Half a day to produce those panels. Then I asked them, how long will it take us to put those panels up on site after they're produced and get to site? He said 3 men, 3 days. 3 men, 3 days. So easily. We can transform this industry very, very quickly. In terms of cost savings, we can dramatically improve the cost of delivery on site if we make this shift towards off-site construction. I talk about an improvement of 20%. I personally believe it can be an awful lot more than that if we can scale this up and get the necessary support from government. We can reduce waste by as much as 80%, and that feeds into that whole sustainability piece I mentioned. So, to summarise, a modern industrialised strategy promises a scalable and resilient industry, and it feeds into national economic growth and balanced regional development. And the IWFM can play a major role in helping us achieve that. Why? Because they're the leading light, or they could be the leading light in all of this, because these are businesses that are currently operating in industrial manufacturing settings, and they're achieving all of those benefits, and an example of how we can achieve all of those benefits so far. The only problem is they're struggling in terms of getting the necessary support from government to allow them scale up and provide stable and resilient futures for their businesses going forward. So how do we get them to scale up? We need to get behind this strategy as an industry, all industry bodies, IWFM included, and become a voice and start influencing government in terms of how they need to support the industries, allow that scalability to happen. And if they can do that, we will immediately start addressing the skills issues and get support for bringing new skills on board, more diverse skills on board, and we'll get the necessary investment we need in research, innovation, to allow all of this change happen. So I think there's plenty for us to feed on out of this. There's plenty for the IWFM to do in this respect, to become a major voice around all of this. And if we can work with IWFM in that respect, we'd be delighted to, and we'd encourage them to do so also. So I'd like to finish off by saying best wishes to Stephen, Michael, Bill, and the rest of the council for today's event, and leave it at that.
Okay, Mark, thank you so much. Now, I understand you won't be able to stay and join the Q&A at the end because you have to head away to a board meeting, actually. But if I could just maybe pose one other statistic to you, okay, that might be of interest to you to include in your stats, okay, that by moving to an off-site manufacturing of construction products, you also can increase the propensity for the sector to export. Which will be significantly important or whatever going forward, okay? And the point that you make about it being a regionally based industry, okay, is also significantly important because the sector is right across every county in Ireland, okay, in regional and rural locations or whatever, okay, and bringing manufacturing jobs to those types of locations can only but enhance the quality of life in those areas, you know. So certainly, I know, and I forgot to sort of address at the start. I had spent 39 years with Enterprise Ireland. That was part of my rush when the technology failed. Okay, I had joined for 2 years. Okay, and I ended up in there for 39 years. So I obviously am good on the counting. Okay, but one of the things really was the whole issue around innovation, and we've got some great speakers coming up behind you now, Keys, and then Susanna later on. Okay, and Gregorio talking about the role that innovation can and should play. And one of the deficits that we have here in Ireland is a lack of a dedicated centre of excellence for innovation for the construction sector, okay? And I know that it is a priority for the incumbents in Enterprise Ireland, because it was a priority for me, and government is committed to that. So hopefully some of the things that you set out there are already being addressed by government, okay? And we'll see some traction on those in 2021 and into 2022.
And if I can just say, Stephen, in that respect, we shouldn't forget that when you think about the 10-point plan that the government had, this new government that we have had, at least 4 of those points, this industry can contribute to achieving by virtue of this strategy and virtue of what these industries within the IWFM are doing currently in the regions. And of course, it's sustainability, jobs, skills, etc. Absolutely.
And I think the point you made is very well about the issue about the jobs in the industry. Okay, what people want are careers. Okay, and it behoves the industry to make it an attractive location for people to develop careers, as opposed to just have a job or whatever.
Absolutely.
Okay. And if I could just ask you one question, okay, if you look forward to 5 years, okay, and you have your role now with SISK on that offsite piece, have you any thought about what the degree of off-sightedness, or what percentage you think could be realistic in the next 3 to 5 years to be achieved?
Gosh, hard to put that in perspective, but if you just took the housing industry in particular, one that's so topical today, I think in 5 years' time you could see with the right support and the right backing, you could see at least 30 to 40% of that industry being delivered in an off-site conditions.
Yeah, I agree, and maybe even a tad more or whatever. Okay, you know,
If we're really big and brave, I think we can absolutely achieve more.
Okay. Well, listen, I'm sorry for posing that question to you unexpectedly. Okay, I'll let you go. Thank you for your time, Mark. Really appreciate it, and your insights. Okay, and best of luck with the rest of the day, and indeed with the job of the off-site piece within SISK as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So look at